Hello, and welcome to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Doug Bartosh, also your city manager. And we're here today with Rudy Rodriguez, who is known by a lot of different names in the city, but we know him as Rudy, who's in charge of our administrative services area, which also includes our finances and our budgeting.
Correct.
And as we do every year, it's that time of year to formulate the budget for the next fiscal year, which begins July 1st, 2016. And so you want to talk a little bit about the process, Rudy, and how it starts, and you know, because it's been in process since about January. And so kind of go through the process and let people know how we formulate the budget.
Well, in reality, it goes year round. We always do reporting for our department heads and for our council, so it's basically a year-round process. But we really get into the nitty-gritty come January. We're pushing nowadays to try to get our budget fully adopted by before July 1st. We used to we could go as far out into August, but council has directed us to make sure we get it done before July 1st. So we're pushing real hard for that. The way the process works is we send out our first set of documents to all of our department heads, and asking them to give us what we call a baseline budget. Basically, what that says is no staff, no capital, what's it take to open those doors, keep those doors open with the current services that we have. When we get those numbers back, we start asking for any kind of staffing changes that they'd like, or additions, as well as many of the capital items that they think they're going to need during the course of the year. And while all that's going on, our offices start putting together our revenue numbers. Some of them we have to wait for from the state, others we go ahead and project ourselves. So their expenditures and revenues are done totally independent. And then we put those together, come up to bottom line, and right around this time of year was when we sit down with you and discuss the additional needs that our departments need as far as staffing and capital. And that's where the give and take begins. We sit down and decide what staff is a priority, what capital is a priority, and then if we have the resources, we go ahead and plug those numbers in. If we don't have the resources, then we have to make a call whether we want to cut back on the stuff that we requested or go back to our department heads and say, if you want it, we've got to come up with the cash somehow. Then right about the end of April, or mid-April, about the time now, in the next week or so, we'll be giving our council a preliminary budget, a proposed budget. We are looking at meetings on the 25th, 26th, 27th, and 28th, I believe, of the month. We're going to have a 4-day work session, long session with the council, exactly 25th through 28th. We've got scheduled with budget meetings with council. Those usually start about 6 o'clock and go to 8, sometimes a little bit later, sometimes a little bit earlier, open to the public. Where we discuss the proposed budget. After the proposed budget, council gives us direction. Do they like it? Do they not like it? Do they want to move soft items around? And we take it back and produce what we call a tentative budget. And what the tentative budget does is it actually tags our expenditure limit, meaning when that budget is adopted, we will not break that threshold. We can make changes to the budget, we can move money around, we can move item, capital, personnel around, but we cannot break that threshold.
Cannot spend more than.
Exactly, that's our limit. And then we'll present that to council, we'll go over it briefly, and if they've got any changes, they make any changes. That gives them time to think about things that we might have forgotten, or we would like to add, or they would like to add. And then from there, they give us direction to finalize our budget, and that'll happen just before the beginning of the new fiscal year. So it's a long, tedious process.
You know, and And you're right in that the budgeting process seems to go year-round, because we generally start in January with a strategic planning session with the council that serves as kind of the priorities for the formulation of the budget the following year. And, you know, it really is a year-round process. And then you have the audit. The auditors come in every year and do an audit, as is required by law.
Right.
And goes from there. You know, a lot of times people begin to compare us to other jurisdictions, and we always talk about, well, Cottonwood is different in that it's a full-service city.
Right.
So talk a little bit about what a full-service city is, what that means when you start doing comparisons.
You know, I'm real proud and I know you are, and a lot of our staff is, and a lot of the people, local people, are very proud of Cottonwood. We are what I've always termed as a full-service city. We have an airport that we fund. We have a water and sewer facility that we fund. And we also have parks. We have our own library, our own PD, and we have a fire department, a municipally run fire department. And all of it runs off of our sales tax, because we don't have a property tax. All of the other communities around us don't have an airport. Take, for example, even Sedona, they have an airport authority that runs the airport. We have an airport commission that is an advisory to Cottonwood, to our Cottonwood Council, but we fund that airport. They have their own resources, but any shortfall, the general fund pays for. We're the only city in the Verde Valley that has a municipally run fire department paid for by our sales tax. All the other communities around us have a fire department, but they're paid for through property taxes through a fire district, and that shows up on their bill. City of Cottonwood citizens don't have a fire district tax. Library, the same way. We've got one of the largest libraries in the area. Other areas do have a library. One of the other communities actually doesn't have a library. They're actually independent of the city. The city does support them to an extent, but it's still independent of the city. So we are the only city in the entire Verde Valley that has all these services, and they're all paid for from the water and wastewater. We own our water and wastewater. Some of the other communities do. Clarkdale owns their water and wastewater system. Sedona has only a wastewater. They don't own their water system. Camp Verde currently, I think they just acquired their wastewater, and it's a utility district, so they're taxed also. And but they're looking to acquire their water companies because they've realized how we realized years ago, that it's important to have control of the water in Arizona, because we are arid country, and it's important that we take care of our citizens and provide for our citizens property, take care of all the needs that they have. And we don't have we're owned by the citizens of Cottonwood. We don't have any shareholders that we have to abide by, so we make sure that we're taking care of our citizens, not necessarily of our shareholders like private companies. So we're one of those cities that survives on our sales tax, and we run a lot of services that other communities don't, that do have property tax.
You know, and probably one of the biggest things I know we I don't want to say we struggle with, because it's a great resource, is our recreation center.
Right.
We're the only city in the Verde Valley that has that kind of an offering, and people from all over the Verde Valley come to use that facility.
Correct.
But it is an expensive facility to operate, and you know, it exists on the fees that we charge, and the general fund kind of picks up the rest.
Correct.
But it's a great resource, but again, it's very expensive.
Well, again, you know, it's a commitment that was made by the voters several years back. to build a recreation center, we knew what we were getting into. We had long discussions over the costs of the debt. We talked about the shortfalls and where we were going to go ahead and fund those shortfalls. But council made a commitment that it was important to try to improve the health of the Verde Valley. Absolutely. And that's why it's there. It's there. It is costing the city of Cottonwood resources, but our investment was made to improve the health of the community.
And again, to kind of address those quality of life issues.
Correct.
I mean, this is something that, as you said, the citizens voted for. They supported this, and I think everybody sees it as, you know, it just builds that quality of life that we all want in the community. So kind of an important piece. Let's go ahead and take our first break, and then we'll come back and let's talk about revenues, and then we'll talk about debt.
Right.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. At work or at play, you're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Oh, hey. She's cute. Nice going, man. Things are going great for you. You've earned a night out. Good drinks, good friends. Yeah, we can go ahead and call this a good night. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Not smart. Yeah, I saw that coming. Say goodbye to her. Ouch, that'll hurt your bank account. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. I hope you like eating frozen dinners. Alone. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Doug Bartosh, and we're here with Rudy Rodriguez, who's our general manager for administrative services in the city, which includes budget, finance, human resources, IT, purchasing, transit, a variety of things. And we're talking about the budget process, and we want to talk about our revenues first, and then we'll talk about any debt we carry. But you talked a little bit about it. What are our primary sources of revenue?
Well, we've got our primary sources are actually twofold. One of them is our sales tax, our local sales tax, and then the other is our state shared sales tax, and that encompasses state shared sales tax, state shared income tax, our highway user revenue funds, which is our HERF funds as we call them, motor vehicle taxes. Those amount to a little over $2 million a year for us. Our sales tax amounts to about $13 million a year. Now, that's what we're estimating this coming year. The rest of it are all smaller fees. You know, we have, and I'm talking our general fund supported governmental and businesses. Those are usually, we have, you know, our planning fees, inspection fees, all these other smaller fees that we have, business registration fees. And then, of course, on our enterprise funds, we have used the bigger fees that we collect there are of course, our user fees, both for water and wastewater. And just so we understand, we treat them totally different. Our enterprise fund being our water and wastewater, they're treated like a business, meaning that the revenues that come in stay there, and we have to, in a sense, make more we have to definitely make more revenues to make sure we accumulate for capital projects and debt service into the future. On the general fund side, on the other hand, many of the things that we do don't generate a revenue for the city of Cottonwood. We get this pot of money from our two major revenue sources and then all the little sources, and with that we run the city as well as do a lot of projects such as programs such as TVR and this coming year with Tilted Earth. that don't make money for the city, but they bring in a lot of people to produce revenues for our local businesses, and some of it does trickle down as sales tax, but what it does, it stimulates the economy. But those are only two big sources that we have as
really make up the bulk of the budget.
Exactly.
You know, and I know you hear it, and I hear it occasionally too from citizens who don't live in the city, you know, complain because their fees for using the rec center, participating in the recreation programs are higher, and they say, well, I shop in the city, I pay the same sales tax as you know, people who live in the city. How come I have to pay more?
Well, the way we look at things, and the way actually things should be looked at, is our state shared revenues. We all, including citizens inside and outside, we all pay a sales tax to the city of Cottonwood. When you live outside the corporate limits, that state shared sales tax, even though you pay it to the state, doesn't come back to the city of Cottonwood. If you're outside the corporate limits, you're not counted as part of the population. So consequently, since you're outside the corporate limits, you're not counted. And what ends up happening is we may have 11,000 population here inside the limits, we may have 11,000 out there, but that 11,000 that are outside the corporate limits does not contribute to the city of Cottonwood. Those that are inside the corporate limits do contribute through our state shared sales tax. And that's also why it's important for communities to grow, because as they grow, they pick up more population, we get more of the state shared sales tax.
So, I mean, just to give people an idea, I think the total state shared sales tax based on our, you know, a little more than 11,000 population, for the city of Cottonwood, I think was around 4 million, 4 point something.
Well, actually, it's a little bit less than half of that, just on the sales tax alone.
No, but I mean total state shared revenues.
Total state shared revenue runs us about $4 million.
Yeah, okay.
And you know, if we and as we pick up more population, that amount grows and grows and grows. But right now, our population growth in Cottonwood is fairly small.
So, and again, I mean that for every citizen that lives within the city boundaries, we get a portion of their state sales tax, we get a portion of their income tax, we get a portion of the tax that they pay on gas,
right?
Their motor vehicle fees.
Correct.
We get a portion of that, where people who live outside the city limits,
correct,
we don't get any of that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That's where the difference is.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a big difference, because probably the number of people who live outside the city and use all these city services is probably, you know, twice at least what the population inside the city is. So you can see how much money is not being collected because we're such a divided kind of community. Almost.
Correct, and also realize that when we also have the services that we provide is not just for our corporate limits and those outside. We have a lot of people that come through Cottonwood on a daily basis from outside, be it from Camp Verde, be it from Sedona coming through, be it from Clarkdale, be it from Jerome, and others that come through here on their way to a different destination. And we have to provide services for each and every one of those people. We've estimated before that during the day we have as much as we're providing services for as many as 40,000 people that come through Cottonwood, and then in the evening it dies down as everyone leaves. But pretty much if any given time of day, especially in early mornings or in the evenings, you can go by 89 and 260 intersection and you realize, wow, that's a lot of people coming through that intersection, and many of them are not, you know, village people, Cottonwood or Verde Village people or anyone. It's people that are just passing through, going to a different destination.
And certainly we appreciate everybody who comes to shop or work or whatever in Cottonwood, but there's that stark reality of you know, trying to balance a budget based on 11,000 plus population
Right.
when we're servicing a population of probably close to 40,000.
Right, and always don't forget that the city of Cottonwood is the only community in the village, in the Verde Village, in the Verde Valley and Sedona that doesn't have a property tax.
Right.
You know, I know I kind of get on my soapbox about the third-legged stool. You know, we have our state shared revenues, we have our local sales tax, and most, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of cities have the third leg on that stool, which is property tax, and that's one thing we don't have. And it makes it difficult for us.
And let's go ahead and take our second break, because I want to come back and talk about debt. And I think property tax is an important part of that, because there's a lot of cities that not only have a primary property tax, but they have a secondary property tax too.
Correct.
So let's come back and talk about that a little bit. Thank you.
Todd's a great guy. I mean, look at him. What a sweetheart. Attaboy. Wait, Todd, what are you doing? How totally selfish and un-Todd-like of you. Come on, Todd. Come on, man.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Doug Bartosh, and I'm here with Rudy Rodriguez, who is our finance guy in the city, and we're talking about the budget for this year and next year. And we talked about the budget process, we talked about our revenue picture, and now let's talk about the debt. And certainly there's been, particularly during this political season, allegations of the city's going broke, you know, we're way over our head in debt. And so talk about what is the debt picture, because I know we have a debt, but
Our debt, you know, and again, I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but we're roughly about $58 million in debt. And has this been the highest point? No, it hasn't been. We've been well over $60 million in past years. And I know we've had the controversial discussions with people that we were debt-free back in 2007 before the recession, and as a matter of fact, we weren't. We had a $6 million debt with our sewer plant when we did the expansion. We still had the public safety building that we had built back in, I believe, in 2001 or so. The library was still being paid back then. So we had debt back then. And people don't realize it because people weren't talking about it too much. And I'm glad they do talk about it, because we're getting ready to refinance a big portion of our debt. We did a big refinance last year of our first set of water bonds when we bought the first set of water companies, and we are going to be able to put in an in-ground line on Mingus Street. That was going to cost us $1 million. We're going to be able to put it in for $450,000 because our lender, being the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona, gave us a forgivable principal on that. So on top of that, we reduced our interest rate by half.
which will save us what, about $1.5 million over the life of the loan?
Actually, on that one's roughly $2.7 million over the life of the loan.
And so why wouldn't you refinance it when you can make those kind of savings?
Right. Yeah. And then again, this year, WIFA we're looking to refinance a second set of loans, which will save us about $3.2 million in interest payments, because we're going to get our lower interest rate. And secondly, is we are building a redundant line worth $2 million, and they've given us $800,000 on forgivable interest. So roughly we're looking at nearly $4 million worth of savings over the life of the term. Again, similar deal as we got last year. And what that basically does is kind of offsets future rate increases.
You know, the other, I think, important piece of that is back when we bought the water companies, which was actually a debt created prior to the recession.
Right.
We took on the debt for Clarkdale so they could buy their system.
Correct.
And through this refinancing, we'll actually be able to separate out their debt, and they'll assume their debt as opposed to the citizens of Cottonwood. So that's another real bonus to this as well.
It's a big bonus because it takes about $6 million worth of liability off of our books that we've been carrying for Clarkdale for a number of years. Now, mind you, Clarkdale was paying their debt service, but we carried the liabilities on our books, and that's a big one for us. So those are the two biggest debts that we've got. On top of that, we also still have the recreation center, which we recently just discussed, and then of course we've got recently we took on an excise tax financing for some of our street projects that we had. Some of them have just recently been completed, being 12th Street, and others are just getting cranked up, being the Mingus Street project from Willard Street to Main Street. So we've got a little bit of debt on us. So
in terms of the largest debt we hold, I mean, per item, I mean, what is the largest amount of that debt for? What did we... You know.
The largest amount of debt that we're carrying right now happens to be for our water companies.
Right.
And again, those are not on the governmental books, they're on our enterprise funds, which they have to figure out. They have to pay for their own debt. Then, of course, if you go from there, the next thing we have is our recreation center, which also did that recreation center financing. Not only did the recreation center, it put a little over $1 million into the pool by adding additional lanes and renovating it to last another 30 years or so. And it provided the expansion for our library and almost doubling the space on it. And we were fortunate enough at the time to have invested it and gotten enough interest to redo what is now called Mickelson Parkway, to make sure that it was kind of a whole package. That entire area where those two big facilities are at would have a nice, beautiful entrance, which even today we're still improving on that entrance. And then from there on in, the other things we have is the recent excise bonding that we did for the streets.
And I think the communications, new public safety communications center was included in that.
Right,
as well.
the public safety, the communications center, along with street projects, all that was bundled together.
So are we in danger of going broke?
Here, we just had that discussion a couple days ago. Do we struggle? Yes. No community in this area is not struggling with somehow. The issues that we have is we have a council that is very citizen-oriented, and I know that they want to provide a lot of resources for our citizens, so they push us really hard to make sure that we have the services that the community needs or wants. And that puts us in a bit of a bind. Our economy hasn't come back as strong, but are we in danger of going broke? No, we're just in danger of beating up our department heads a little hard to come up with more and more resources.
Making sure that budget is balanced.
Exactly. The state of Arizona requires us to provide a balanced budget to our council. We cannot have a revenue source for the expenditures that we have. So we in a sense, what the danger we're in, if you want to call it a danger, is that we may have to kind of trim down some of our programs, or not add any of the programs, or turn away some citizens' requests because we don't have the resources available. But we will always balance the budget before we bring it to our council.
And you mentioned the council, and that's what they're elected to do, is to serve the citizens, to try and provide what they can in terms of requested services. And we really do get a lot of requests for services that we should add. I mean, now we're talking about the homeless situation, and everybody looks to government to fix those problems, but there's got to be a corresponding revenue source to be able to fix those. But I think our council has done a great job, really, of providing as much service as they can within the limit of our revenue. So,
we've been real fortunate that unlike other, and I'm not going to say not in the Verde Valley, it doesn't happen, but you've seen other municipalities that basically go out and they end up bonding for maintenance and operational expenses, and that's a big no-no. You really should never try to look at that.
Yeah.
But the city of Cottonwood, all the bonding we've done has been for infrastructure to improve the community, improve structure. So this is much like taking on a mortgage. You get a mortgage, you get a home, you have an asset that needs to be maintained, needs to be taken care of, but nonetheless it's an asset that's a long-term asset. So it's not like we're using it to pay for salaries or maintenance and operational. So whenever you're going to bond for something or borrow money, you want to make sure you put it into something that's going to bring you some value in the future.
We're out of time because we could go on and talk budget forever, but I think the important part of this show today is to try and be as transparent as possible about our budget process, about our revenues, about our debts. But if you want to learn more about it, go online. We have a transparency page on our website that shares all the budget information. Rudy does a great job of meeting with people in the community regularly to explain budget issues, because it is a confusing process. And last but not least, we're getting into the budget session. We'll soon be presenting the budget to the council. Come down and participate, learn about what's going on, ask questions. That's what we want our citizens to do. It's important that we get citizen involvement in the budget process. So thanks for joining us today, and again, if you have any questions, let us know.